Today on the podcast, we are talking all about finances and cash flow. Cash flow isn't something I've actually talked much about on the podcast ever before, so I'm really happy to have a special guest to chat to you all about finance and cash flow. So join me on episode 65. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Why, hey there, and welcome to episode 65 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there and lots of fantastic choices out there, so I sincerely appreciate you making me one of them. If you're a first-time listener, then thank you for finding me and super welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I am the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job via this podcast, social media, and basically everywhere else I appear to actually make your business life simpler. Today I have a guest, Jen Waterson from Simply Smarter Numbers, and we're talking all about cash flow and actually, at the moment, cash flow in a crisis. Now, perhaps numbers aren't your thing, but don't you go switching off just yet. Or maybe you're not in a cash flow crisis when you're actually listening to this, which is clearly in the future of March 2020 when it was actually recorded. But I promise you, there is so much wisdom in here that I really encourage you to still take the time to listen to it. But I can't start this podcast without sending you some virtual hugs. There is no doubt we are in a crisis, and there are so many business owners out there having sleepless nights. For you, I have very little wisdom, except pride has left the building. There is no room for pride anymore. If you're entitled to something, which is something I've been talking to my clients a lot about in the last week, if you are entitled to something in all of the stimulus packages that are coming out from either state or federal governments, please take them. Don't be too proud to accept help. Now, I do actually know what I'm talking about here, because there's not many people who walk this earth that are prouder than farmers, and I actually live with one of them. So from the bottom of my heart, don't be too proud to ask for help or to accept help in the time we're living in at the moment. My second piece of wisdom: as a marketer, a coach, and a mentor, it would be really remiss of me not to say, please don't stop marketing. Yes, absolutely. Watch what you are marketing and the language that you are using in your marketing. But A, your audience is looking for some normality. Don't leave those people who already know, love, and trust you hanging. And B, this too shall pass. So please don't give up on your business right now when it probably needs you the most. Please don't turn off that marketing tap. If you're not quite sure what to market, or you need someone to run something by, then head into the Like-Minded Business Owners group on Facebook and ask away. It is your safe space. Or, of course, reach out to me personally, one-on-one. I'm more than happy to help in any way I can. Okay, pep talk over. But I do adore you, my listener, so please take care of yourself and, of course, your loved ones around you. Okay, it's really over now before I start to cry. Let's talk about numbers. Let's get into numbers. My guest today is Jenny Waterson, as I said, from Simply Smarter Numbers. Jen is a fellow rural girl doing amazing things for her clients and her community. I love her passion, and I actually envy her passion for numbers. I used to be a numbers geek until I found marketing, and now apparently there's not room in my life for both of those things. But Jen has some amazing gold in this interview. And yes, it's all about numbers, but I promise you, you will learn so much about cash flow, how to handle it, and what to do, even if you've never created a cash flow before. So let's dive in with the two Jennies, which is kind of like the two Ronnies. If any of you listening are old enough to remember the two Ronnies, but it's the two Jennies. All right. Anyway, listen in. It's a great episode. Can't wait for you to hear it. Thanks so much, Jenny, for coming on the podcast today. I'm really excited to have a chat to you, even though we are talking finances, and not many people might be excited by that, but I'm sure you're going to teach it lots. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. I'm very excited to be here too. I know not everybody loves to talk finances. I get that all the time. It's people's one of their most least interesting topics, actually, numbers and finances.
Oh, I know. I think people, one of their biggest fears is speaking publicly. And I think probably dealing with their finances might be number 2 on most small business owners' lists.
Yes, you are probably spot on right there.
Jen, I know that we know each other a little bit or a fair bit, but for those who are listening that perhaps don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure can. So I am from Simply Smarter Numbers. I've been an accountant, a CPA. I'm not that these days, but that's my history, is 20 years of working in that field, in that financial field, with lots and lots of different small business owners. So the thing that I always loved and adored about that part of my life was working with business owners, and that's pretty much what I've done now, is shedded off the tax side of things and just started working with business owners to help them build their profitability using financial strategy. So doing the things that I love to do.
Yeah, perfect. Someone's got to be passionate about it, Jen. So I'm so glad it's you.
Yeah.
Jen, I've asked you to come on the podcast today. In fact, I asked you to come on the podcast before the world blew up with coronavirus to talk finances with us. But the conversation just seems a little bit more important at the moment, and especially talking cash flow.
Absolutely. Cash flow is right now on a lot of people's minds. It's the way it is at the moment. We're not here necessarily to talk about coronavirus as such, but cash flow, it just brings, what it's done is bring it to the front of people's minds. And to be honest, in my opinion, cash flow should be always at the front of our minds. So it's kind of my opportunity to bring it to the front of minds and hopefully leave it there for a while. You know, I want business owners to keep thinking about their cash flow above and beyond this and what they're going through and over the next few months and few years.
So why is it that you think that cash flow and perhaps business finances is a one-day thing for small business owners?
Yeah. It is a one-day thing, I think, because it's too hard. I think a lot of people place it in the too hard basket. I think a lot of people don't like what they see when they look at it. And it's just not that fun, to be perfectly honest. But it's essential. If you're going to run a good, solid business and you're going to be a great business owner, then you just need to be across your finances. You need to be across your cash flow, because it's the one thing that can jump up when you're least expecting and really bite where it hurts.
Yeah. So if people do find it hard, Jen, how can we simplify it? What tips and tricks do you have for us? What wisdom do you have for us today about bringing it to the forefront and perhaps simplifying it so we do actually deal with it?
Yeah. When it comes to cash flow, it's just about having an awareness of what is going on around you and around your business. And there are certain things that you can look at regularly to, and what happens typically is once you start looking at these certain things on a regular basis, it just starts to make more sense. It's like anything that's new. Once you've dealt with it for a few times. Even if it's social media, you deal with social media, and I would hazard a guess that Instagram at some point was a brand new scary thing for people to get onto and to put their faces out there and get on videos and do all that sort of stuff. But it's like everything else in the world. Once you've done it a few times, it just starts to make sense and it starts to feel a little bit more natural, but you just have to start.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's no true. I can't better those words really. We just have to start looking at things. So you said there are certain things that we should be looking at often. Can you like maybe delve a little bit deeper into what you would actually recommend that we're looking at with
Yeah.
our cash flow?
Yeah, with your cash flow, a lot of people will look at their bank balance. A lot of people will then look at what money is due to come into them, so their accounts receivable, and they'll look into what's due to go out, their accounts payable, do a little bit of a sum on that, and then think that they've got their cash flow under control. It's actually a lot more involved than that, but it's not much more complicated than that. I always advocate a 15-week cash flow forecast, which is, nobody likes the idea of having to do a cash flow forecast, but in circumstances like this where people are struggling with cash flow and things are changing on a week by week basis, a weekly forecast is actually one of the best things that you can do for your business. And it's about just knowing what expenses are going out of your bank account next week and the week after and the week after and the week after. Now, at the moment, it's not always easy to try and work out what your revenue, what your income might be, but it's actually not that hard to work out what your expenses are that are coming up over the next few weeks. And I say weekly because it really does make a difference. You can expect to have a big payment come in at the end of the next week, but if you have wages going out before that, and there's, the numbers aren't adding up, there's not enough to pay those wages, then you're in trouble. So you'll know that in the week that it's coming. But if that's an issue that's going to happen over the next, in say, 7 weeks, you want to know 7 weeks in advance that you're going to have this massive cash flow shortage, and it gives you a bit of time to prepare.
Yeah, and I think that is, exactly what is probably happening both in the world today, but there's many crises that happen in small business,
Yeah.
many things that fluctuate our cash flows. So where do you start? Like, it's all very well to say we should be looking at this cash flow often and perhaps building out 15 weeks. But for a small business owner who perhaps is sitting there going, secretly, I have never done a cash flow forecast.
Yeah.
And shout out to you if that is you thinking that. So Jen, where do we start with that? How do we go about gathering our numbers, or what tools do we need?
Yeah. There are simple templates out there that you can use for a cash flow forecast. Not everybody is ever going to do it. I could talk to people till I'm blue in the face, and a lot of people are just never going to do this, right? So, and I'm very aware of that, but there are templates out there. I have templates myself that I can give to people for free. But what needs to happen is people just need to please use them. You've got so many different things that will come up in your business. Over the past 20 years, there's been so many different things that impact cash flow. Right now, we're going through another one of those. Over the past 20 years, we've had various epidemics. We've had SARS, we've had the GFC, we've had various terrorism issues. There's always something that's going to impact business, and that's beyond your personal stuff that's going to impact your business. Your personal stuff could be a death in the family. It could be any other number of things that happen in your day-to-day life. You could be the loss of your best salesperson. So many different things affect business, and if something is going to affect your business, it affects your cash flow. So getting a hold of a template that you can start pulling these numbers together. Now, when I say pull the numbers together, go back to your bookkeeping. Your bookkeeping is the place to start. Your bookkeeping is, if you can pull up your profit and loss statements and have a look through every one of those items And you'll know yourself when things are due. And it's in this 15-week forecast, all you're going to do is pull out each one of those items and write it into the template when it's due to be paid. If it's due to be paid in week 3 from now, 3 weeks from now, then you're going to put wages in 3 weeks from now. If you're going to be paying a subscription that's paid once a month and you know it's on the last week of each month, then you're going to put that into the last week of each month. It's not a complicated process. It just kind of looks scary if you've never used a spreadsheet before.
Yeah. Okay. So what information can a cash flow forecast give us in just business generally, or perhaps when we are facing a downturn in our sales in our business?
The information that you'll get from a cash flow forecast is you'll get confidence for one, confidence to know that you can actually afford to do the things that you think you are going to do in your business. It tells you immediately whether you are going to run out of cash in any week in particular. And when you know that information 3 or 4 weeks in advance, it gives you an opportunity to do something about it. Like go to the bank, chase down some debtors, people that owe you money. Maybe it's putting off suppliers that you owe money to because you know that you are going to run into trouble in that week.
Yeah, I think when I had my retail shop and my good friend Jan did help me do a budgeting forecast or a cash flow forecast. And one of the things that she said to me, which has always stuck with me about August in retail, was a time where there wasn't many sales, but we were buying for Christmas. So it was that real, my sales weren't going to pay the amount of, stock that we needed to get. And I remember her saying then, if you want to extend or get an overdraft or something, you need to do it here in May, because when we look at your cash flow forecast in May, you have the most money. So go to the bank before the crisis hits. Don't go in August when you're like, oh my gosh, I can't afford to pay for all my goods. Go in May and have it there ready to go. And that one piece of information was an absolute lifesaver. We didn't need it, but the thought that I could read my cash flow that way and I could save myself and plan was really, really handy.
Yeah, it's confidence. You actually have the most confidence in yourself when you can see what's happening and where your bank account balance will be in 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. It all gives you a lot of confidence and gives you control over your business. The ability to go to the bank way before you need it is something that the banks really appreciate. They're always dealing with issues and people that have come up against things in the last minute, because people do leave a lot of things to the last minute. But if you can go to them in advance, there's big ticks against your name.
Yeah. So, Jen, if someone's business has taken a downturn and they don't have a cash flow because it's not something they've done, what are your tips and tricks for using it now or starting it now and using it to perhaps gain some advantage or to have a look at your figures? How can it help perhaps when the crisis or the downturns hit?
When it comes to now and getting to a position where you feel like you're in some sort of a cash flow crunch, a bit of a crisis, whatever it is that's caused that crisis, it doesn't really matter what the cause is so much. It's how it is you act when you get to that position. And there's quite a few different things that you can do. And I can go through a couple for you when it comes to things like inflows and outflows. So let's just pretend you haven't done the forecast and you really have no idea. Well, if you find yourself in that position, one, go and do the forecast. Okay. Let's pretend though that you're not going to be that person and you're not going to do it because you don't have time, because there are plenty out there that just won't do it. So when it comes to your cash inflows, I've just got a few tips I think that might be really helpful for people when they do find themselves in that situation, one thing that I always talk about a lot is going through your database of clients, going through your database of customers, and going back to them and finding, asking them directly, is there something else that they would like to purchase from you? Is there something else that they might need from you? Is there something else that you can add value to their lives and provide value to them that they are willing to pay you for? Going back to those people and selling to them. So it's about not being afraid to sell. It's much easier to sell to those sort of people than it is to go and sell to brand new customers. And I feel like that's a bit of a gold mine there for a lot of businesses. I'm not sure what you see in your businesses, Jen, but I feel like if people can go back to those people over and over again and keep selling to them, it's just going to be a quicker sale, particularly when you are in a bit of a cash flow crunch. And then there's other things that we can do as well when it comes to actual work that people are doing right now. So work in progress is something that if you make cabinetry and you have work in progress, these are jobs that are not yet finished. It's about getting those out. It could be that you're a solicitor and you have work that you're doing for a couple of clients. It's about getting that work out. So if you're in a cash flow crunch, it's about doubling down perhaps on getting the work done and getting the work out the door and invoiced ASAP. So that's another way to really just start generating some cash flow, generating some income for yourself. And then there are other things like something that I would probably do, and particularly right now with the, not to refer back to the coronavirus all the time, but right now might be a really good opportunity for people to change the way they have historically invoiced their customers. If you have always historically invoiced and given terms, then it might be a really good opportunity for you to pull that back a little bit and change those terms. Use this situation now as a way to change what you have done historically.
And can you just do that, Jen? Is that just a matter of just letting your clients or your customers know that, we are changing our terms? Or is there a more complicated process that you need to go through?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. It's your business. I don't mean to make that sort of sound too overly simplified, but yeah, you can. Yep. Now, a lot of people will have terms and conditions and contracts and things like that are already in place. And that's the other thing, it's just one of those things you might need to go and visit. If you do have contracts in place, get them looked at again. If it's something that was solicitor prepared originally, have that looked at again. See if you can change any of that over. But I wouldn't hesitate to call a client and say, okay, we've actually already agreed on a price and it's meant to be a 30-day thing. I'm in a bit of a crunch right now. Is there any way can I pull some of that forward? Can we get half of that paid now? I think the thing to remember is that whatever's going on out there in the world, not everybody is in a cash flow crisis. Mm-hmm. So not everybody is feeling it as hard, as bad as other people. A lot of people actually still have cash sitting there. They're just going to be a lot more careful with where they put their cash. That's going to be the thing that you need to remember, is not everybody is suffering. And I think if you can keep that in the front of your mind, then you will have more confidence to go and say to people, hey, I know we agreed that this wasn't going to be paid until in the next 30 days, but is there any way we can bring that forward? Like, have those conversations with people. They all listen. They want to help. And if they can, they will. And particularly if you're doing a good job for them, then, they want to help you.
And just when you were talking about the work in progress, it just reminded me how and whether that's something that as small business owners we need to look at and adopt. But when you're building a house, so you make a payment
Yes.
I don't know. I've never built a house. I live in a 100-year-old farmhouse, but it's kind of like, I'm gathering, maybe when the slab's down, there's a payment. When the doors are being locked, there's a payment, and then there's a final payment. So if you've got work in progress and they're big jobs, but you've always just sort of billed at the end, like perhaps now is the time to double down and think to yourself, should I change that process? Should there be, interim bills done at certain points?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important for people to not always fall back on what it is they have done historically. What you've done historically may have worked really well in the past, but
Mm.
it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work really well for you going forward. So it's a great opportunity for you to, do that and use the current situation, use the coronavirus, if you need to, as the excuse to go and change that. Now, it doesn't sound very nice to go and use this situation, but please do. If you can find an opportunity out there for yourself, then that is one of those things to bring your payments forward. Bringing your payments forward and reducing your debtors and does a huge amount for your cash flow. Bringing that money into your account today as opposed to in 30 days is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another one. Another thing is also, I would look at, this is a good one for tradies, or if you have friends that are working as tradies. There are tradies out there that will come and do the job and then bill you when they get round to billing you, and then you'll pay when you get round to paying. Okay, we've all had those sort of tradies. Now, I'm saying tradies, but this sort of goes with any business. It's just tradies are a good example. But then we've also, I don't know about you, Jen, but have you ever experienced where you've had a tradie come to your house and the bill is in your inbox before they even drove out the driveway?
No, but one of my old clients, Carmen, he did that. He used to have it on his phone or some sort of program, and it was basically emailed as he walked out the door.
Yeah, and that is the way I feel that all tradies should be operating. So, the technology is there to do it, and it takes away any of the hassle of going home and sitting down and doing the paperwork some other time. But it just speeds up the cash flow for you. And then the next step from there is to be carrying your FPOS machine and get the payment done before you leave.
Mm.
And start setting your own rules. So start using the technology that's available to you, whether you're a tradie or you're in some other business, doesn't matter. Use the technology that's available there for you and get the payments now, today. Saves a whole lot of messing around and chasing up outstanding payments and everything that goes with it. So I really like the idea of just dumping debtors altogether. I understand a lot of people can't do that or not game enough to do that, but yeah, start working at it if you can. And like I say, use the current environment if you can to change the way you're going to operate your business going forward.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one when we talk about debtors, so it's about getting those debtors in. When I say debtors, I mean accounts receivable, so people that owe you money. It's about getting that money in and doubling down on that. A lot of things, I see it often with businesses where they let these sit for too long. If people owe you money, they owe you money. Don't be scared to get on the phone and give them a call. And a lot of the times people seriously just forget. They lose the email, particularly these days where invoices are on email a lot. They get lost. So it's, and we all do it. I've lost emails myself and thought, oh, I need to get that account paid. And we all do it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be scared to ring. Don't be scared to get on the phone and ask people to pay their accounts when they're due.
Yeah. And if you're suspicious that they're not getting your email, don't email them to find out if they got your email.
That's a very good point, Jen. Get on the phone.
Get on the phone, that old-fashioned thing called the phone.
Yeah. And it does, when it comes to chasing debtors, if you do have someone that's troublesome, I would, in the past, I have put my mobile away and gone and got somebody else's mobile phone and rang them. They don't recognize that number and they'll answer that call. And that sounds a little bit bit sneaky, but they're being a bit cheeky at the same time by not paying their accounts and trying to avoid you. So, so that's, that's something that we really need to focus on, is getting that money in and getting it in ASAP. So, and the other little tip there with getting in your debtors is to, if somebody says they're going to pay you next Monday and the money doesn't turn up next Monday, call them next Tuesday. So keep the pressure on them, because, and particularly at these, in times of pressure, people will pay the people that are screaming the loudest. So you want to be one of the ones that are yelling the loudest. Otherwise, you're going to be left at the bottom of the pile, unfortunately. And and no one wants that. We want you to get paid. Hopefully you've done good work for these people, so we want you to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another way to get some income in, if you are ever feeling a bit of a cash flow crunch, is selling unused stock, or obsolete stock, or selling unused office equipment, or that sort of stuff. And I can use an example here. We had a few years ago, it was less of a thing about cash flow in this particular business and more a thing about, okay, we've got this particular business had about a month of downtime where they really had some employees but couldn't really keep them busy throughout that time. And so we said, well, why don't you just use this time to make some other cash and sell out all of this old office furniture that you have lying around the place. Now, not everybody has a lot of that sort of stuff, but some businesses that have been around for a little while, you just accumulate things. So, and with buy swap sells and different groups that are out there these days, it's a really easy way to make a couple of grand really quickly.
Yeah. I was just looking for something the other day in my crystal cabinet, and there was something in particular I had in my head, and I knew it was in there somewhere. And as I was going through, it's just like, I need a garage sale.
Yes.
I was like, goodness me, I didn't realize that I had accumulated things. Yes, it's quite like I have. And so it's like, oh, I think I need to hold a stall at the local market or something like that and start getting rid of a few things like that. Yeah. So
yeah. So it's never going to make you millions of dollars, but if it's a couple of grand is a couple of grand, and it might just, help you get through. Plus at the end of the day, it clears out a whole bunch of junk.
That's right. You won't no longer be on the hoarders show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then when it comes to, so here I'm talking about different ways to get cash in, different ways to get the cash in faster. And we can talk about cash outflows. So
yeah, that was my next question. So what sort of things can we do to balance that other side of the sheet, which is the things that we actually have to pay out?
Yeah. So when it comes to what you've got to pay out, this is where it gets a little bit, what happens, I think, with business is when things are going really well, in times of boom, we tend to get a bit lazy and we accumulate costs that we perhaps don't really need. So it's about preserving your cash by trimming the fat. If you can trim the fat off your expenses, and the way to do this is go back to that profit and loss that you can print out of your bookkeeping, go back to that and go through that list item by item and have a look at everything that you're spending your money on, and just ask yourself, if I get rid of this expense, will it put me at risk? Will it hurt me in the long term? Will it impact my productivity? Just have a think about cutting those expenses and what it is you can slice away, because there will be things. It could be some sort of subscription. It could be that you're spending excessive amounts of money buying lunches for the team every Friday. I don't know. There will be all sorts of things in there that you can slash, and they don't have to be the big things, but they do add up after a while. And when they're ongoing expenses, after a few months, you can save yourself quite a lot of money, and it does help just take that pressure off.
I often refer to them as the one percenters. How much are you paying on your FPOS? Is there a cheaper deal out there? Is the bank charging you money to actually go in and physically deposit cash into your account? Okay, so is there any other banks or different accounts that you can go through? Your electricity, your phone, all those things, they're one
So
percenters,
many.
but at the end of the day, they can really add up. And you're exactly right. We kind of get lazy and go, you just keep paying the bills and not really thinking, is this the best deal for my business?
Yeah. And that's one of the other advantages of having one of these cash flow forecasts in place is that you're not only just paying the bills because they need to be paid, but these numbers are hitting you in the face on a regular basis if you're looking at it regularly. So a weekly 15-week cash flow forecast that's ongoing and never ends. I say 15-week because you get to the end of the 15 weeks and then you start all over again. And when you've got something like that you're revisiting every Monday morning or once a week, whenever your time is, these numbers are slapping you in the face every day. So that's the other advantage of having them there, as opposed to direct debits. Things just, they go out of your bank account. You don't even notice them necessarily.
Yes. And that's their ploy. A lot of
Yeah.
businesses, that is their ploy, that it's just money you just didn't know you had.
Yeah, that's it. But when it comes to cutting your expenses, I think it's really important to not overreact and just cut everything. Now, unless you are one of those, like if you're a business and your back's against the wall, then yes, you need to really be, you need to cut it all. So, but for those of you that have a bit of a stronger balance sheet, you have a little bit of a cushion there, then when you think about cutting your expenses, I think it's really important to think really hard. It's things like your marketing. I often get often it's either do I cut my marketing or do I not cut my marketing? Now,
We don't cut our marketing.
yes, I knew exactly what you were going to say, Jen. But your marketing, if your marketing is working well for you, then it's generating sales. You cannot cut your marketing expenses. Now, if your marketing is not working well for you, then you perhaps need to come and talk to Jen. But
but it does. You need, well, even when you say marketing as a whole, you need to break it down. What's your return on your investment for the different things that you are doing? And if one of them comes up that there's no return, then yes, you probably may not need to cut the budget, but you need to cut that activity.
absolutely. So it's about looking at it and just being a bit smarter with your approach to your marketing. And then it's another one that could be a big expense for some businesses could be those that have business coaches or business advisors or business mentors, those types of people that are involved. If it's working for you and you are in a real crisis, then you probably need to keep those people hanging around. This is when you really need those people. If it's not working for you and you don't feel that you're getting the value from that person, then yeah, cut your ties. And sometimes we just have to do that. Sometimes having these people around, business coaches, so sometimes having them around feels nice, and it's nice to have someone there that you can go to every month or sort of bounce ideas off. But if you find yourself going month to month or week to week, whatever, and not really needing that person, cut them off. If it's and find somebody else when things get better. But when it comes to slicing your expenses, don't necessarily cut off those people, because if they're doing a good job for you, this is when you need them, when times are tough. And then the other one is accountants. So people hate spending money with accountants. I know, because I was one for a really long time. But when they need their accountants, some of them are really good. You get some really great proactive accountants out there in the world, and you need those people in your life when you are struggling, particularly if you're struggling financially. You need to have someone that you can trust, someone that's working with you proactively, and someone that can help you get through this situation. And unfortunately, if they're any good, they're probably going to be expensive. So that is not an expense that I think you should be looking at cutting back on.
And I think the word that you've used, proactive, is the most important word there, because one of my clients' accountants sent them an email just 2 days ago to say, we have closed the business, no more face-to-face meetings. Not, you can contact us by phone, or we're quite happy to do Zoom, or these are all the things that you could be doing to help your business during the time that we're going through. It was just a blanket, just letting you know we've closed our office doors to one-to-one. And I just thought that was the most awful thing I'd heard in a very long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I think sometimes just the message doesn't get across very well. You know, you need to be proactive, but you need to be a human at the same time. So if
Yep.
everybody if everybody out there is struggling, then you need to be a human. Look, a lot of accountants, they don't have the best uh, personal. Then how do you say that, Jen?
I don't know. But my thing
Interpersonal
was that
skills.
email could have been so much better if it had finished with, but look, here's a link to a few blogs that have some fantastic proactive ideas, or here's a link to book a 30-minute Zoom call chat with us if you feel like, you really need to talk to us at this point of time. We are always here from you. It could have just been so much better.
Yeah, I think just they often just don't think beyond what it
The
is that they
point.
need to communicate with
Mm.
you. So the point of that communication is, okay, well, we're doing what we can to avoid the spread of a virus.
Yeah,
But yeah, take a negative and turn it into a positive.
absolutely.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
be proactive.
poor accountants. We do love
Oh,
them.
I
Ugh.
know, but I can call them out a little bit because, well, I am one. And the other thing, so when it comes to talking about your expenses, employees, anyone with employees out there, one thing to look at is if you are looking at cutting back on your hours, cutting back their hours, there's a couple of things to look at. One is something that's worked really well in a lot of businesses in the past is when you're in times of stress, is just cutting back maybe one day or certain hours, but putting it to the whole workforce and not, you can't try and carry everybody necessarily because then you're sort of cutting your own throat there. That's just not a thing that people can always do. But if you want to hang on to them and you can see some light at the end of the tunnel, then have some conversations with your employees, talk to these people, and maybe if everybody is full-time 5 days, cut everybody back to 4 days and shuffle things around a little bit and just share the weight of what's going on amongst everybody. It might actually just band everybody together as well if that's something that's going to just take the weight off your wages bill.
I guess just on that point, Jen, before you keep going, how important is it to have these conversations with our staff members of the finances inside our business? Is there something we should be sharing with them as we go along and just not when there's a crisis? Or is it kind of not something we should be sharing too much with our staff?
Yeah, it's such a good question, Jen. It depends on you as a business owner. Some people are so protective of their personal financial situation, and they can be protective for sometimes one of two reasons. One is things are going really poorly and they just don't want people to know how bad things are,
Mm-hmm.
or they're really protective because things are going really well. So I wouldn't be sharing too much information when it comes to the finances with staff. To be perfectly honest, there's too much risk and you can get a lot of negative feedback. Nobody wants the negative feedback. They don't necessarily, and they don't get the whole picture. They don't understand the whole picture. And they don't need the whole picture, to be perfectly honest. What they need to know is that you care for them, you care about their position, that you appreciate the work that they're doing, that you're going to do everything that you can to keep them employed for as long as you possibly can. So that's what they care about. And I think it's more important to have those conversations with your team.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as an employee, we've all been employees in the past. I I think as employees, we want to know about what matters to us and what's going to impact us. And what impacts me and drives me won't necessarily be the financial position of the business that I'm in. Now, in saying that, everybody wants to be part of a winning team. So it's really great to let people know that things are going well and maybe set certain financial goals within your business. So you can put out certain goals like sales goals and things like that. People, whatever's going to drive, whatever's going to help the situation, but some things are just not going to help the situation. And sometimes, cash and profits are just nobody else's business but yours, your spouse's, and your accountant's, to be honest.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, I interrupted, but I think that was a really great point. So thank you for sharing.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So where to from now? Oh, the other thing that I want to probably say when it comes to employees is kind of the awkward conversation around what if you cannot keep these people employed. And it actually does happen. If you can't afford to keep somebody employed, then have the conversations, do your research, get into, have a look at Fair Work, have a look at redundancies, have a look at all that sort of stuff. Talk to the people that you need to talk to. Your accountants can help with this sort of stuff as well. But do your research and be really clear on what you can and can't do when it comes to terminating or redundancies and that sort of thing. But make the call. There is, unfortunately, a lot of people leave it too late. If you cannot afford to employ these people that you probably love, we love to have our employees there. We love these people. They've probably been a part of our lives and our businesses for a really, really long time. But you can't be everybody's hero. And sometimes, unfortunately, we just need to make the tough call. But I think the point I want to make here is make that call sooner than later and make it an informed decision.
And our cash flow can help us do that.
Yeah. It impacts your cash flow, and like your wages bill in a lot of people, in a lot of businesses, is one of the highest expenses, the biggest cash outflows that you could have.
Yeah.
So it's a big one to have a look at, is who you can and cannot afford to keep on in your businesses in the long term. So massive impact on cash flow. And yeah, when it comes to outflows, I guess, Jen, the other thing is really about paying your suppliers and creditors. And when you find yourself in a position of of a squeeze or cash crisis, then talking to your suppliers about what it is that they can do for you to push things out. To, if you can't pay your bills, speak to these people. They're actually a lot easier to talk to. They're a lot more open to negotiating payment plans than you would ever imagine. The worst thing that you could ever do is to sit on your hands and say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the biggest thing. I guess it's about treating your suppliers and your creditors, treating them as you would like to be treated if you're on the other end. So we spoke earlier about people that owe us money, and if we heard from somebody that owed us a lot of money and we had a conversation with that person and agreed to make a payment plan over an extended period of time because of their situation, because of their circumstances, then our suppliers are likely to do the same thing back for us. So I think that's an important thing to do there, is just to keep those communication lines open with suppliers. And same goes for all creditors. So whether it's, no matter whose bill you're paying, probably the only ones you won't get away with is your phone bills and your power bills, to be honest. I don't know how we go negotiating with those types of companies, but the rest of them, in particular people that we actually speak to on a regular basis, yeah, go for it. Have those conversations, and you can only ask, because if you don't ask, the answer is no.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the telecom businesses and electricity businesses, they do have those things in place. But I often think about when I very first started off. My career started in law. The wage wasn't necessarily terrific that I thought it was going to be, and I used to have a little card in my purse that was a for my phone bill, and I would go down to the local credit union once a week and I would pay my $20 off. And it was kind of like something like we can do that by BPay now. So I guess, again, if you looked at your cash flow and you could see these big expenses coming out, can you make them flow over several weeks rather than just one big expense coming out in week 4? Maybe it could spread over weeks 1 to 4 when the cash flow was a little bit more even.
Yeah. Yeah. And that does help people. That helps people so much. And if you can, and again, if you've got the forecast sitting there in front of you, you can play around with that and say, well, what if? What if I don't have that $2,000 expense that comes out on the last day of every month? And what if I just spread that out so that it is equally spread out over the 4 weeks of the month? So it's another benefit of your cash flow forecast, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, inflows and outflows, Jen, that's what it's all about. Cash coming in and cash going out. So, hopefully, a few of those tips will help somebody out there anyway.
No, they've been great. It's been great, Jen. Thank you so much for coming and having a bit of a chat to us with cash flow. So, Jen, if someone is in a cash flow crisis now, or perhaps they've never done a cash flow forecast, what tips, what tricks can you give them? Like, what can they do today or in the next 72 hours that can really help them along?
I would say you need a plan. You need a plan to deal with your cash flow. In order to prepare a plan, though, you need to understand what your financial position is right now. And the place to start with that is two places. One is make sure your bookwork is up to date. No one enjoys doing that, but please get that up to date and go and see your accountant or a financial person that you can trust to sit down and sort of have a look at this with you. If you haven't got a forecast, then it might be worthwhile actually, finding a template and just getting one of those done now. Use your bookwork. Everything that you have there in your bookwork it's enough there for you to take the next steps as long as it's up to date. So start working on a plan and find out how your cash position is right now.
Yeah, very solid advice. Very solid advice. Jen, you've been absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast and having a bit of a chat to us. Like I said at the start, this was something we had scheduled, but became really quite important given perhaps the circumstances of the world at the moment. But really, for small business owners, there's always something lurking around the corner that, our cash flow forecast can save us from. But you've mentioned a couple of times about a template. Do you have a template that my listeners might be able to have access to?
Yeah, I do. That will be available on my website, and perhaps I could get the link to you, Jen, so that you could put it up there for people if they're interested in downloading that.
Yeah, beautiful. I will definitely have that link in the show notes. And if anyone has heard something or wants to reach out to yourself in Simply Smarter Numbers, how's the best place to get in contact with you?
My website, simplysmarternumbers.com. So you can jump over there, have a bit of a look around. I'm available for, we do a lot of one-to-one consulting as well. So if anybody feels that they're at the point where they could do with a bit of a business continuity plan or something along those lines to help them get through whatever crisis they might be in at the moment, then you can always just jump on and book a 30-minute consult call and we can have a chat and talk about how it is that you might be able to not just survive what it is that we're going through, but come out the other end thriving.
Yeah, beautiful. Don't survive, let's thrive. That
Yeah.
sounds great. There's a slogan there. It's probably already taken.
I'm sure somebody's got it snapped up somewhere, Jen.
Oh dear. Thank you so much again. There has been so much gold in this, and just I can't thank you enough for giving your your expertise to us on the podcast. So thanks so much.
No worries. Anytime. Thanks, Jen.
I hope you enjoyed that episode and my chat with Jen, who clearly loves her numbers. But that is all for episode 65. I really hope that you will go and download Jen's little tool that she has out there for you, all about cash flow. All the links are in the show notes, of course, at socialmediamarketing.com.au/65. I'd love to tell you what next week's episode is all about, like I usually do, but honestly, I'm not that organized at the moment. I simply have no idea what next week will be. But do you want to join me anyway? I promise it will be great, and it will be here on Thursday, and it will be all about helping you simplify your business in 2020. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast, maybe even share with another superstar friend, business owner who's doing the daily grind just like you and would really appreciate someone making their business life a little bit simpler. And of course, a rating and a review would be the best gift you could give me this week. I would be forever grateful. Of course, I will see you next week for episode 66. But in the meantime, I'd love to hang out with you on social. So let's get social on social. You'll find me at Small Business Made Simple on Instagram, Facebook. You'll find me at in Like-Minded Business Owners. And of course, on my favorite platform, LinkedIn, you will find Jen Donovan. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Tell her like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.